everybody. I am so excited to be with Peter Balunek from Peter's Wildlife Safari, a former board member. You were a president, right? Past president?
Years, yes.
Yeah.
Joanne and I have the distinction of being the only two who served 2 terms. Actually, I think she did 3.
Okay.
I did
That
2.
was when we had to beg everybody to be a board member, I think.
Right.
Back in the day. Well, and very instrumental on keeping the chamber alive through some tough times. So I'm so happy to see you, and you are well. Yes?
Doing great.
Excellent.
Best as you can.
Yeah, true that. So tell us a little bit about the business, and tell us a little bit about how it's been impacted during this time.
Well, we lead socially conscious luxury safaris to Africa, India, and other parts of the world. And this all stemmed with, we create customized tours, and my market is primarily those here in Northeastern Ohio. They're friends of mine, friends of friends, or someone who's heard me speak. And this was going to be a really big year for us. We had planned 17 weeks in Africa. Over a variety of different trips. We got a couple of them started in February. We were gone for 3 or 4 weeks in Kenya, but the rest of the trips so far have been postponed. So it's really been quite an impact on our current business. But most importantly, the biggest challenge we're facing is being able to get back to face-to-face client meetings. My clients all come because of a personal connection to me. And it's not something where you'll go to my website, you can see the trips and types of things that we offer and see the photographs, but you can't place an order. You can't say, all right, I want to book X safari, do it online and order. It's not that type of service that we do. It's very personalized, customized. We're doing more family private trips. So what'll happen is I'll talk with you, Molly, and we'll have a discussion about what I do and some of my experiences, and you go, wow, this would be a great experience, and I think my parents would really love this, and my nephews. Can we put together, do you do family trips? And I say, sure. And, well, how many people can we take? Because I think I've got 6 or 7 that would do it. And then I'd work with you to design the ultimate experience for you. And that's what we specialize in doing. And that's something that's hard to do over Zoom, and you can't do it through email. It's got to really be a face-to-face relationship.
You literally create this experience because you have so many connections and stuff in Africa. You're able to say, okay, I know Molly and I know her family, and she probably would prefer this experience over this experience. That's why it's so important for you to kind of get to know your client.
Right. Some people have an expectation. They've had friends or family that have gone on safari, and maybe if they've gone to South Africa, they've gone to Botswana, East Africa, they've seen the gorillas, and so they may have an idea of what they want to do, but oftentimes they just mostly have the idea that a particular animal that they want to see. So I want to see elephants, and I want to see big elephants and lots of elephants. Well, there are places in Africa where we can go and try to accomplish that goal. And sometimes they're saying, well, my friend went to XYZ, but the XYZ is not the place to go see elephants. And so that's the conversation that we have. And they go, oh, okay, now that we've narrowed that down, let's figure out a location, let's figure out a time, and then we build it from there. And who's coming, what's the purpose of the trip. We get a lot of multi-generation families. The grandparents really want to spend that time with their kids and grandkids, and this is a great family vacation. Other people, it's an anniversary, a milestone birthday that they want to celebrate. The one group that was being postponed this year was a 50-year-old man with 50th birthday coming up, and wanted to celebrate with friends and family. And so it was going to be a 50th birthday trip. So there's all different types of reasons why you want to go.
And that's the perfect thing about booking it with you, is that you connect, you're not Joe Schmo over the internet or over a phone call. It's Peter, and you're meeting and having coffee and really truly getting those personal touches in there.
Right. I get a lot of people that my clientele tend to be people who've always wanted to do this, but they didn't know how to do it and go about it or they were afraid because it's a big deal. It's a big trip for them. It's typically longer and a little more expensive than their average trip, and they want to do it right. And when you look at Africa, it's like trying to say you want to visit the United States. Africa is made up of 53 countries with more than a dozen to see great wildlife. So how do you choose that? So if you have someone who lives in overseas and they say, well, we want to come and visit the United States, where should I go? Well, you ask the same questions that I'm going to ask that you want to do about Africa. So you're familiar with the US, so am I. I'm also familiar with Africa. And now I can narrow down those 53 countries to the experience that you want. So you're right, that's why it becomes a personal consultation. The other added bonus is that I'm on that trip with you. So oftentimes you might book a trip online, but that person that you've been communicating has been a fabulous person, but you've never seen them in person or even on a Zoom call. And now when you go over there, you're left to other people that they say that you have to rely on. In this particular case, you've had breakfast or a meal with me, we've gotten together with your family. I may be on that same flight traveling with you, or at least when you land, you see a familiar face and there's someone there to answer all your questions and take care of everything while you're there, to be that operator and make sure that you're getting the experience that you expected.
I mean, that's so important, to take that fear out of it, especially in this day and age of scamming and all those kind of things, to know your person and to know that they're going to be on the trip with you, I think is priceless. Let's talk about animals. You briefly talked about big elephants. What other kind of wildlife does one find in Africa?
Well, there's lots of different variety. People are attracted to Africa's big five animals, and that's your elephant, your rhino, your leopard, your lion, and Cape buffalo. So people have that mystique in mind. But what they don't realize, if you're a birder, it's a wonderful place to go. For many of the places, in particular, I'll use the Masai Mara in Kenya as an example. There's over 450 bird species there. So while you're looking around for these elephants and the lions, you come across dozens of birds every day, different birds that you haven't seen, in addition to all the plains game, the impala, the zebra, the giraffe, all the way down to a leopard tortoise, to banded mongoose. There's just all types of different things to see. It's just, it's a wildlife paradise over there.
And you have an added attraction with your trips. You are an amazing photographer. So there's an element with a trip that I would take with you, and you might be able to help me take some of these amazing pictures that we see in your background there. It's not the main focus of your trip that if I book it, but it's definitely an added feature that you provide, right?
Right. I mean, the photography is a big hobby for me. I always joke with many of my guests are really happy to take pictures with their iPhone. And honestly, with the new 8, 9, 10, 11, they take incredible images plus fantastic video. It's my primary video camera over there. But to get some of the other specific images, I do take a little more gear than the average person. And I always joke with people, yes, I'm that guy with that big long lens. My camera bag weighs more than my clothing bag, and I really don't need a lot of clothes as long as I have my camera. But I'm also there, so if you want some assistance with photography, maybe you're a photo bug and you want to learn about wildlife photography, we talk about what equipment to take, what should you use, the different types of settings, helping you get in that position to take those shots. I'm also there to document your trip. I'm there to document behind the scenes, taking candid photographs of you and your family and friends enjoying this experience. And at the end of the trip, when we come back home, I will then ask for your top 20 to 25 photos that you've taken. And it's not a photo contest, it's just what triggers a great memory or a great experience, whether it's from your phone or a professional camera. I'll take all of the images from all of my guests and we'll put them together in a photo book that I'll give to you as a memento for your experience. And so now you have something that you can take to your family. Because how many times have you seen your friends that go on a trip now and everything's on their phone? and I want to show you some pictures. And then they're flipping through 500 different pictures. Oh, let me show you this one that looked really great. And it takes them 3 minutes to go find it. Here we've narrowed everyone's top photographs, top experiences into a nice book that they can carry around, put on their coffee table, show people, and talk about their experience. And so we've taken them out of the phone, we put them in there in a more tangible way, because regardless of social media and everything else, people still like to look at photographs. They still like to touch them. They still like to take a look at a book. But this is not your parents' photo album. We were flipping through 1,000 pictures from a trip. They're organized and they're put together in such a way that really spells out the whole trip for you.
So cool, so cool. What is a mind-blowing experience that you had on one of these trips where you just had to take a step back and pinch yourself?
Well, there's a couple of them. I mean, one that stands out in my mind was with a particular client. She really enjoyed lions and she wanted to see them. And we were photographing, watching the lions, and they were walking across the field. It was a family, a group of female lionesses all coming, and we would pull ahead of them and watch them as they would come, and they would walk right past the vehicle. And we eventually got close to a hillside with a bunch of rocks, and the lionesses all started calling out, and out of the rocks come about a half a dozen baby lions. And they just came together, met with the parents and the aunts, and they were all rubbing their faces together and culminating. And my guest was just in tears just coming off her face, just watching how spectacular that whole interface is. The other one that comes to mind that happens on a regular, well, somewhat frequent basis is watching a giant herd of elephants walk right next to you, and literally this close to your face, this close to the vehicle, and just their big eye coming across, looking into the vehicle, flapping their ear, flapping their trunk, and then just moving on. And we always tell everyone when they get close, don't make any sudden movements, remain quiet, and this will be a remarkable experience. And so if they're moving there, just to have this 7-ton elephant, a 14,000-pound animal that could just roll you over, just gentle giant, walk right next to you.
What I love about you is that you respect the animals so much. That was really the reason you started raising money originally. Tell us a little bit about that part of your business. You've helped some schools in Africa. You've helped the elephants, I believe, in Africa was kind of how it started.
Well, that's why we call them socially conscious luxury safaris. The socially conscious means that we're not just going to take you from your Western suburban life of Chagrin Falls, put you in a luxury camp, watch all these beautiful animals, take all that stuff in your mind, and then bring you back to Cleveland. We want you to understand how these animals and the role that they play in the local community. So we'll go out and go to a village to see how the local people live. They are still living in mud huts without the normal facilities that we're accustomed to, and their respect for the animals and where they're going to school. Because it's really important to understand, we want to tell people to stop, protect all these animals, stop the poaching, stop this, stop killing them. But it's very easy for us to say when we're sitting in the comfort of our homes that we are now, when you realize what people have to live over there and live with these animals. And they understand the importance of the wildlife and the impact that they have on their lives. And that's something that I want to be able to share with my guests. It started on the trips. One of the things that we always do is take our guests to visit to the local school. And as the school continues to grow, 10 years ago, the Maasai females didn't go to school. But within the last 10 years, they've been starting to go to school. So the enrollment in these schools is just growing exponentially. And we were in a situation where I came across a quote-unquote classroom with that looked like a chicken coop with 80 kids sitting on the floor and tin walls and tin roof. And I made the comment that, we really need to give these kids a building. And then understanding how far our dollars can go over there, it was clear that we were able to I could build the building for the cost of the camera gear that I was shooting. I mean, it was that ridiculous and you realize how fortunate you are. And those are the moving experiences that you have. And so it's a total package, the wildlife with the people, understanding your situation. And they tell you that Africa will change you. And I think if you're the least bit introspective, you'll come back a different person from Africa. I mean, this conversation, my photographs, will never do it justice. It's something that needs to be experienced. You can talk to all my different guests and they'll tell you how great it is, but they'll probably all agree that there's just so much excitement. You just can't get that across to the person, and you just really have to experience, which is why, you know, I'm pleasantly surprised at the number of repeat guests that I have. You know, we take small groups, 6 to 8 people, 5 to 6 times a year. So people often say, well, how many clients do you have? I said, well, we've taken X number of people, but of that, you know, there's 10 people in there that are now on their second, third, and fourth trips with me.
Right.
So it's really nice to have that group of clientele, but we're not always taking a lot of new people. It's a lot of people who loved it and enjoyed it and are coming back. You know, the one guest that was with me in February, this is his 3rd trip, and now next February, the plan is to bring his family of 10 people. That'll be his 4th time with me, and now he's bringing, you know, 9 new faces.
Yeah, I know Dewey loves to go from the popcorn shop.
Twice, yep.
Yeah. Any close calls with some of these animals?
No, that's a common question that I get a lot of times. People want to hear horror stories. They're like, so what's the hairiest thing that you've been in? What's your worst case situation? And we've had mock charges from rhinos and from elephants. But really, you pointed out before, what we try to do is teach people about the respect for the animals. One, it's safer for you to keep a distance from the animals. And if they want to come to you, they will, if they're comfortable. So when I talk about those elephants, we don't just pull into the center of a herd of elephants so that they can walk right by us. We're off 100 yards photographing them, and they're eating grass, and they decide to come, and they're curious. They want to know, what are these vehicles and what are these people in there doing? So when you have that respect for those animals and you're reading their behavior and understanding, it's a wonderful experience. You know, the cats, for example, the leopard, will oftentimes use our vehicles to be able to hunt its prey and be able to hide behind it. But when you see a leopard that's been surrounded by lots of vehicles and his ears are pinned back, you know that he's stressed out. And that's not a normal behavior. So by being able to read that behavior, we know, you know what, maybe it's our time to leave. There's a couple other vehicles that aren't following the right protocols, plus you're not getting a relaxed animal. And you don't know that going into it. You think, well, I want to get close to this animal. And many of the guides over there are excellent and they're well trained. But like in every other business, there's people that don't have the experience or the knowledge, or their primary motivation is getting a tip. And they think by getting you close to these animals and getting them jumping on your vehicle that it's going to give them bigger tips. And it's just not the right thing to do. So we do try to do a lot of education.
And we discovered that we're the only 2 people in the country who has not watched the Tiger King.
Yes.
Nor do we have any desire to do so. But you made an interesting comment about animals in captivity versus wildlife, and that was a really odd or a real shocking statistic for me.
Yeah, so in particular with the tiger, I've always used this statistic in my talk. There's actually more tigers in captivity in the state of Texas alone than there are in the wild.
Wow.
There's roughly about 3,000 tigers in the wild. And, you know, we primarily spend our time in Africa, but India is a fabulous place. And if you think that a lion is a majestic, beautiful animal, you really need to see a tiger up close. They're absolutely breathtaking. And to think that there's only 3,000 of these animals, and just in Texas alone, and I understand that Tiger King makes that reference too, that there's more in captivity in Louisiana or some other state. So I don't know how many are captive in the United States total, but I mean, the fact that one state has more is pretty
crazy.
telling. And, you know, my children suggested I watch it because it's, you know, a train wreck, and I kind of tend to watch some of those types of shows on TLC and other places. But I said, I can't do it with the animals. I mean, I don't mind humans doing their own thing, but when you're taking something to an animal, because my whole thing is I'm trying to be a voice for the voiceless, and that's what the animals are. My self-proclaimed title is wildlife ambassador. That's what I consider myself.
That's
and I'm
perfect.
here to be able to explain the wildlife and the nature and bring all of that stuff and that education to my guests and clients, because it's just not in their everyday repertoire to understand those animals. What I found was that Africa is a world away for all of us, and it's not top of mind. If you want to talk about grizzly bears or deer here in northeastern Ohio, everyone has an opinion about the deer. But all these other exotic wildlife animals are something that's different. And they may have heard something about them, or they may have seen Tiger King, but they don't truly understand it. And to be able to see these animals still that are in the wild, that's the other question I get. Well, you're going to a reserve. Are they really wild animals? Yes, they're not in fences. It's no different than going to Yellowstone, where you see the bison coming down and the caribou. Those are wild animals. That's the same thing that we're witnessing in Africa. And we're seeing the zebras up close. And to be able to watch a giraffe elegantly walk by you is another one that is very curious and loves coming up to the vehicles. And you're sitting in the vehicle and you're looking out where their legs start at the top of your head.
Right.
And they grow from on top of that. You're talking about an animal that's 14, 15 feet tall. And to see little babies, it's just spectacular.
Oh my gosh. Well, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more?
So the website is peterswildlifesafaris.com. We're on Facebook with that same name, and Instagram. And I encourage, what I look for to spread my messages is be able to come and do a presentation. So if you want to learn more about my trips, something for you, I'm happy to contact me through one of those three media sites. But also keep me in mind if you have an organization and you'd like to have a guest speaker come in. I can come in and talk about wildlife conservation. I can show you a simple slideshow of just what life is like on safari. I can talk about the human-animal conflict and the experience over there. I've talked to several Rotary clubs. I've been to Chagrin Rotary a couple of times. Garden clubs are good places. Schools in particular, I've gone in and talked about photographic techniques. I speak to photo clubs, camera stores. So if you're looking for someone or an organization and you like a nice presentation that ranges anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, that's another great way for me to get in front of people.
That's awesome. And in your free time now, since you're not in Africa all the time, what have you been doing? Any extra hobbies you've picked up?
Well, it's a good time to go through a lot of the photographs. It's a time to update the website. It seems like we're always, never as organized as we want. And given the time of year, I'm getting outdoor projects completed that have been on the to-do list for a long time. The plan was to be gone 17 weeks this year, which is pretty significant. Most of the summer and most of the fall, which would have made it difficult to get a lot of these things done. So I'm catching up on all of that stuff, hoping that all of this is going to be pushed into 21, and that I'll have at least 17 weeks in Africa next year. And next year we're doing a new trip. We're going up to Canada for polar bears.
Oh wow!
So one of the places that people ask is, well, where else do you go? What do you do? Will you take me to New Zealand? Will you take me to these other places? And really, I want to take you to places where the wildlife is disappearing rapidly. And so the polar ice caps is one of the things that's always been on our list. Also, along with the snow leopard, we're going to be returning to northern India, up in the Himalayas next year in April of 2021, to go look at snow leopards, which are extremely endangered, extremely elusive. In fact, we go with the intent of not planning to see one, but the scenery up there is so spectacular. And but the new one in the summer up to Canada, up to Churchill to see polar bears. It'll be a walking safari. So we won't be in vehicles, and we'll be walking in the presence of the polar bears, of course, with appropriate distance and appropriate guides and techniques so we're not endangering our guests or the wildlife.
Very cool. Very, very cool. One more time for the website for folks.
PetersWildlifeSafaris.com.
Great. And if there is one thing that you could say to everybody, what would it be during this time?
Well, in relation, I think the word of this period is flexibility. There's a lot of questions about travel. Will it come back? What's going to happen? And I'm just telling people we need to be flexible. Things will come back, but the world is going to look different when we do start traveling, but it will be there. And, we talk about planning, and, the types of trips that I put together are not something you decide to go on a whim. And they do take some careful planning so that you can get the right experience. Many of the places that we're staying have 10 or fewer tents. And if we're going and taking 5 of those with our group or more, it takes some advanced planning to get the dates that you want. So now is a good time in this down period to spend some time, plan 6, 12, 18 months in advance, and hopefully 21 and 22 will be the time for you to choose to take a safari.
Yeah. So folks, make sure you reach out, because it's a once in a lifetime, or 4 times like that one guy, but typically once in a lifetime a trip. And there's nothing like doing it with somebody that you know and trust. And you've really built relationships with the villagers and the other companies there. So you add that personal element too with the neighborhoods.
Well, and that's what I enjoy. I mean, from my time with the chamber, I was always a problem solver. I like challenges. That's what I enjoy about crafting this. I'm crafting a solution for your family and for your friends to give you this experience that you want. And another popular question is, well, how do you know all these different people? And it's no different than networking in Chagrin. You meet someone, you come into the chamber office or a chamber function, and you find someone, and then they introduce you to somebody else. And that's what I've done in Africa. I will come there with a trip, have a group, and then it'll get extended. I'll stay on for another 6 or 10 days by myself, or in the case, Dewey came with me one time, and we go out and explore. And I talk to people that I trust, that are quality people, to say, I want to have this experience. So for example, in Kenya, we're doing a lot of work in the Masai Mara, and that area is changing with the number of people that are coming in. It's getting very popular. So I'm looking for places where I can offer different experiences like fly camping, horseback riding, walking safaris that you can't typically do in a national reserve. You're going to need to go to private conservancies and private land. And there are other areas, and so we're trying to spend more time at camps and conservancies that are owned by local people. So sometimes we can't avoid going to a camp that's owned by a British affiliate or a German company. But when we can, we try to support the local community. So in my case, I'm looking for more options for my guests where there's fewer crowds, more intimate experiences, getting to meet with local people, because they didn't realize, they thought they were going to love the animals. But they say, sometimes I think that experience in talking with the local people is as good, or in some cases better, than the wildlife experience. Mm-hmm. And the best part is they didn't expect that. They expect the wildlife, they expect the animals, but they didn't expect to fall in love with the people and enjoy it so much. And that's part of the reason I continue to do this, is I went there for the animals and fell in love with the animals, of course, but then fell in love with the people and want to be able to do some things. So it's just, when you're right, when you want to come there, if you have a suggestion, if I don't know, then I've got the contacts that I can go and say, this is what my guests are looking for. Who do you trust that I can work with? And in that travel business, it's so important to have someone that you trust. Mm-hmm. You mentioned about the online purchase. I'll tell you a quick story. My daughter and I were in South Africa, and we met a gentleman on the trip who, he and his wife had flown from Atlanta, Georgia. They totally booked their entire trip online, $21,000, landed in Johannesburg. There was no one there. No one there to greet them, no one to do things. They went back to their email contact. The business wasn't there. It didn't exist. They lost $21,000. they said, well, we're already here. And they booked another trip and spent another $21,000, and they figured they'll fight it when they get back.
Oh my gosh.
So fortunately for them, they had the resource to be able to spend another $21,000.
I'd be stuck there forever.
Right, but but that's what happens, and they thought they got a good deal on this trip, and if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And the other thing that I want to mention about the camps and through this whole COVID-19 is the way the tourism business and the operators in Africa have been so accommodating. When this started early on, when I got back in the beginning of March, I had some clients questioning it, thinking about rescheduling. It was starting to get to be a big deal. And the response with all my operators across 100% of them said, Peter, we will be as flexible as we need to be. We don't want to lose the booking. If you need to reschedule, that's no problem. Normally, we take the final payment 60 to 90 days before. The one company said, let us know 10 days before you're coming.
Wow.
If you want to know. We can be that flexible. Please don't cancel. We will make this right for you. And
that's because you have created that relationship with those people.
And well, in fairness, they're doing that to all their clients. It's more of a testimony of the type of people that we're working with, that are looking long-term, that are established businesses. The one camp owner right now is, he's still continues to pay his employees while other people have dropped off. We've started a GoFundMe with him through our charity to help him, because how long can you continue to do this? It's no different than the businesses back here in the U.S. How long do you want to continue to pay, or can you afford to pay? But they all take the right attitude, and they really understand tourism in Africa. And I think that's the other thing people really enjoy. But they've been first-class operators, and it's a testimony to the type of people and the character of who we're dealing with. And hopefully, it's because I pick good people.
Now, you mentioned 21,000, which may scare some people. That was just those people's trip.
That was their people.
Yes.
3-week trip. It was for 2 people. It probably included airfare and some other types of details.
I don't want to scare anybody from not checking you out, because that's not your price.
Well, it depends on whatever people want, what they want to be able to do. But you can go to Disney and stay on property with a family and spend $10,000 a person.
Oh, for sure.
It's not unrealistic to be able to do that. But Africa is not. It's not the most expensive trip, but it's up there. I mean, it's not Antarctica, but they're all different price points for everybody. And
sure.
It just depends on what you want to do, and it's really about starting and having a conversation. And maybe it's not something you're going to jump on this February, but if you know what it is and you can start planning, the people that we know in our community, the people that I'm working with, these trips are possible for, my contacts and our friends. Like I said, may not be tomorrow, but with proper planning, most people will be able to do these trips.
And another bonus for working with you and having that personal touch to be able to work within your budget, maybe. Peter, this is what I can do, so you can't do that online.
No, and understanding the trade-offs, because there are some things that if you look at an online itinerary, one of the popular phrases is everybody has a window seat in the Land Cruiser. That's how they market it. And it's not until the guests get in the Land Cruiser and they're over there, we market as one person per row, meaning that you have 2 window seats. Because what happens if you're traveling with a group of people that are not your family and friends, and there's a person in the seat next to you, and that's where the elephant decides to come, or the leopard is down below, do you really want to lean over them? So there are different things. Once you start explaining to the guest why things cost this way, to be in a reserve is $120 a day per person. If you're in a private conservancy, that cost can be $120 to $150 a day. So once they start realizing, we're going to be in this reserve for 10 days, it's $900 per person times a family of 4, $3,600 just to get into the park. Oh, well, now all of a sudden that total package price doesn't seem outrageous.
Right. Right.
Realize that we're not putting 8 people into an 8-passenger vehicle, and we're putting only 3 or 4. So if I have a group of 9 people, technically I can fit all of them in one vehicle. On our trips, we have 3 vehicles. Well, that's going to come at a cost, and there's going to be a trade-off. If you're going all of this way and you're going to spend this type of money, I'm going to show you how to enjoy and get the most out of that experience. Because, as you said, people often phrase it as a once-in-a-lifetime trip. And I'll agree with them and let them decide if it's going to be a multiple one. I thought I would go to Africa one time in my life, and I've been there 40 times now. So, I'm one of those guys that, thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime.
Right, you get hooked.
Right, but if you're going to go this way, you're going to invest this time and effort, let's do it and understand how and the best way to do it and get that best experience. I don't want to go to a place where there's 60 tents and 140 different guests. I want to be at a place where there's 8 tents and at most 20 guests, and while we're having dinner, we can meet some other people and enjoy people from around the world, or we can enjoy the whole place to ourselves. We can do a private mobile safari where we're the only people there. There are no guests. So it's really whatever you want to do. And I'm there as that resource, as that advisor to be able to help you understand the pros and cons and the differences in putting it together. And having me on the trip is a bonus, but it's not necessarily costing you more, because you guys, the average person, when they're buying online or from their travel agent, they're paying the rack rate on these different things. I'm able to buy these accommodations and experiences below rack rate, which allows me to be there as a resource for you. So don't think that because I'm on there, okay, well, if our trip's $3,000 a person, we got to figure out how to pay for Peter and spread it out. A lot of those things, when you compare it to where you go by yourself, it's the same.
Right. Well, this has been lovely. I've appreciated getting caught up with you. So folks, make sure that you visit Peter's website and get in touch with him. And this has been lovely. Thanks for chatting.
My pleasure. Thank you, Molly.
Have a great one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.